As we walked across the grassy baseball field, I began to think about how Mid-City compares to downtown. So many more trees, not to mention open spaces. But Carol took control again, using our short time in the park as an excuse to give me a brief history lesson. She explained that the Pito House at the far end of the field is one of the oldest homes in the city, home of New Orleans' first official mayor, James Pito, who, incidentally, was also the painter Edgar Degas' uncle. Then Carol said that Phyllis's son Greg was dating a girl from the high school next to us, Cabrini. I inquired about all the dog piles, and she added that the little park is something of a neighborhood meeting place. "What about the cat owners? Where do they go?" I asked to be funny. But Carol ignored it. She was distracted by something. Rather than answer the moronic question, she talked about upcoming projects, thinking out loud. "Tomorrow I let the electricians into Ursuline. Then I go to Home Depot for paint. Friday I come to your place and start on the outside." With no response to this, I just continued walking with her as we entered the dirt driveway that heads out the park toward Bayou St. John. When we reached the bayou, she steered me to the footbridge, then paused at the entrance, indicating she wasn't going across. With the late sun coming low and acutely across the bayou from my right, I looked for a few seconds directly at Carol's face, and saw for the first time her unarguable attractiveness. In the late reddish light, she looked not a year more than 42 or 3, possibly even her late 30s. Prior to then, I hadn't noticed much else besides her carpentry and a few extra panels. By the footbridge, taking her in with a bit more attention to detail, I noticed her shape was very well arranged. Carol had curves. Distracted for the moment, I missed the middle part of her directions. "Right on Dumaine, a left on Carrollton, and you're there." She smiled, nodded, turned, and left me standing there, but not unhappy about it. Digesting my momentary aloofness and the cause of it, it mattered in a slightly new and different way that I'd run into it. Conversations with Carol from this point on, I considered, might be powered by more than just my general interest in being amiable and polite with people. That late afternoon or early evening, Carol slid into a much more compelling category of acquaintance. The images lingered, and a harmless fantasy for me, in some ways just a run-of-the-mill afternoon engagement of the senses, more commonly for a tattooed checkout girl or some attractive young woman driving home from work in the next lane. But with Carol, I might be running into her on a semi-regular basis. Halfway across the bridge, I looked back to the left to see if I would notice something unique in Carol's walk or in the appearance of her body from a greater distance. In the second and a half that I stared, she stepped off the curb lightly and took 2 quicker running steps before settling into an able-bodied walk again. She was heading somewhere, her friend's place. When I turned back one more time for a longer view, she wasn't there. Making a quick calculation in my head, not unlike a casual stalker, I decided she had to have reached where she was going, which in turn had to be one of the 2 or 3 shaded houses to the right of the high school driveway. Continuing home from the footbridge, I tripped across a small, peaceful enclave, the very calm and very quiet neighborhood between the Bayou and Orleans Avenue. Straight ahead from the high school, at the opposite end of the footbridge, a heavily shaded street runs into a triangle where 3 streets come together. The inner triangle was landscaped and filled with flowers, and the medieval live oaks formed a near-perfect canopy over the narrow residential roads. The lane on the right opened up to the sky, but to the left the tree tunnel ran full to the end of the block at Dumaine. I went right on Dumaine and then left on the next side street over to Orleans Avenue, where I came out opposite the old can factory, a majestic but empty brick shell with thousands of small window panes, hundreds of them broken. The wide stretch of grass that runs up the middle of Orleans and Mid-City, the neutral ground, is for the most part treeless and open to the sun until it sets, up by the community college a half-mile away. When I reached Orleans, the sun was setting but still fully visible, and still rather strong for as late as it was, as low as it was. I walked up the heart of the median to Carrollton and then crossed to the sidewalk at the corner. In another block I was home, at 4184 and a half Orleans. Strangely, I hadn't seen home coming. Being a big fan of my car and rear entrance on St. Peter, various approaches from the front of the place were still unfamiliar.